Lieutenant Sarah Martinez had always been careful about her reputation. In the male-dominated world of naval aviation, every move was scrutinized, every word weighed, and every social interaction could either build bridges or burn them down completely. She had learned this lesson the hard way during her first year at the Naval Academy, where one poorly timed joke had followed her around for months. Now, 3 years into her active duty career as a helicopter pilot, Sarah had mastered the delicate balance of being one of the guys without losing herself in the process. She was respected for her flying skills, trusted by her crew, and had earned her place in the squadron through sheer determination and countless hours of proving herself in the cockpit. Her call sign, Duchess, had been earned during a particularly challenging training exercise where she had maintained perfect composure while executing a complex rescue mission in terrible weather conditions. The Officers' Club at Naval Air Station Oceana was buzzing with its usual Friday evening energy. The week had been intense, with multiple training sorties, equipment inspections, and the constant pressure of maintaining readiness for deployment. The club served as a crucial decompression space where pilots, crew chiefs, and support staff could unwind and strengthen the bonds that made their dangerous work possible. Sarah sat at a corner table with her closest squadron mates, nursing a beer and listening to the familiar banter that filled the dimly lit room. The walls were covered with decades of squadron patches, photographs of aircraft, and memorabilia that told the story of countless naval aviators who had passed through these doors. The jukebox played classic rock at a volume just loud enough to create a soundtrack without drowning out conversation. Her friend Jake, a fellow helicopter pilot with the call sign Tornado, was in the middle of recounting a story about a particularly difficult instructor from flight school when Sarah noticed Admiral Rebecca Harrison enter the club. The Admiral was a legend in naval aviation circles, one of the first women to command a carrier air wing, with a reputation for being both brilliant and demanding. Her presence immediately shifted the energy in the room, conversations becoming more subdued as people noticed her arrival. Admiral Harrison was not someone who made casual appearances at the Officers' Club. She was known for her intense focus on mission readiness and professional development, spending most of her time in meetings, strategic planning sessions, and official functions. Her unexpected presence on a Friday evening meant something significant was happening, though nobody could guess what it might be. Sarah watched as the Admiral moved through the room with the confident stride of someone accustomed to command. She stopped at various tables, engaging in brief conversations with different officers. There was something purposeful about her movements, as if she was looking for someone specific or waiting for the right moment to make an announcement. The bartender, a retired Navy chief named Murphy who had been serving drinks at the club for over a decade, seemed to sense the unusual nature of the Admiral's visit. He moved with extra efficiency, making sure glasses were filled and tables were cleared, understanding that whatever was about to happen would require his full attention and discretion. Sarah's table had grown quiet, the easy conversation replaced by the subtle tension that comes when senior leadership appears unexpectedly in informal settings. She found herself checking her uniform, making sure her hair was properly secured, and reviewing her recent performance to ensure there were no issues that might have drawn unwanted attention. The Admiral approached their table and Sarah felt her pulse quicken. Direct interaction with someone of Admiral Harrison's rank was rare for a lieutenant and usually meant either exceptional recognition or serious trouble. The Admiral's expression was neutral, revealing nothing about her intentions. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Harrison said, her voice carrying the authority that came from years of command. "I hope you're all enjoying your evening." The group responded with the appropriate military courtesy, standing and acknowledging her rank. Sarah felt the weight of the Admiral's attention as those sharp eyes seemed to assess each person at the table. There was an intelligence and intensity in Admiral Harrison's gaze that made it clear why she had risen to such heights in her career. "Please, sit down and continue enjoying yourselves," the Admiral continued. "I'm just making some rounds, checking in with our squadron personnel." As they returned to their seats, Sarah noticed that other conversations in the club had become even more subdued. Everyone was aware of the Admiral's presence, and the usual relaxed atmosphere had been replaced by a subtle undercurrent of anticipation. Something was definitely happening, though none of them could figure out what it might be. Jake attempted to restart the conversation, sharing another story from their recent training exercises, but the energy was different now. Everyone was more careful with their words, more aware of their posture and behavior. Sarah found herself dividing her attention between her friends and the Admiral's movements around the room. Admiral Harrison continued her circuit of the club, stopping at each group of officers for brief exchanges. She seemed to be taking mental notes, observing the social dynamics and informal leadership structures that existed outside the formal chain of command. For someone of her experience, these informal observations could provide valuable insights into unit morale and readiness. The bartender, Murphy, approached their table with a fresh round of drinks, his timing impeccable as always. He had developed an almost supernatural ability to anticipate needs and maintain service even during unusual circumstances. His presence provided a moment of normalcy in what was becoming an increasingly tense situation. Sarah lifted her beer, grateful for something to do with her hands as she processed the unusual evening. The cold glass felt reassuring, a familiar anchor in a situation that felt increasingly unpredictable. She took a small sip, mindful of maintaining complete control of her faculties, while a flag officer was present. The Admiral had completed her circuit of the room and was now standing near the bar, surveying the entire club with the practiced eye of someone accustomed to command responsibility. Her presence had transformed the casual Friday evening gathering into something that felt more like an inspection, though everyone was trying to maintain the appearance of normal social interaction. Sarah found herself wondering what could be so important that Admiral Harrison would personally visit the officers' club on a Friday evening. Flag officers operated on a different level, dealing with strategic concerns and high-level decisions that rarely intersected with the day-to-day lives of junior officers. Her presence suggested that something significant was about to be announced or discussed. The club's atmosphere had reached a strange equilibrium between forced casualness and underlying tension. Conversations continued, but with less enthusiasm and more careful consideration of every word. Laughter was more subdued, and everyone seemed to be waiting for the other shoe to drop. Admiral Harrison moved back toward the center of the room, her position giving her maximum visibility and ensuring that everyone present could hear whatever she was about to say. The slight shift in her posture suggested that the informal observation period was ending and something more official was about to begin. Sarah set her beer down on the table, her full attention now focused on the Admiral. Whatever was about to happen would likely be significant, and she wanted to ensure she didn't miss any important details. Her friends seemed to sense the same thing, their conversations trailing off as they turned their attention toward the center of the room. The moment had arrived, though none of them yet understood what they were about to witness. The Admiral cleared her throat softly, but the sound carried across the room with surprising authority. Conversations died mid-sentence as every officer turned their attention toward her. Sarah felt the familiar weight of military protocol settling over the room like a heavy blanket, transforming the casual gathering into something far more formal and serious. "I apologize for interrupting your evening," Admiral Harrison began, her voice carrying clearly through the now silent club. "However, I have some important information to share that affects one of our own." Sarah's stomach tightened with anticipation. Announcements like this in informal settings usually meant one of two things: exceptional recognition or serious consequences. She glanced around the table at her friends, seeing her own uncertainty reflected in their faces. Jake had gone completely still, his beer halfway to his lips, while the others sat frozen in various positions of attention. As many of you know, the Admiral continued, we recently completed a comprehensive review of personnel records and performance evaluations across all naval aviation units. This review was part of a larger initiative to identify exceptional talent and ensure our most capable officers are positioned where they can best serve the Navy and our nation. The words hung in the air like smoke from a signal flare. Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she tried to read between the lines of the Admiral's carefully measured statement. Personnel reviews of this scope typically resulted in significant career changes, and the fact that Admiral Harrison was delivering this information personally suggested something extraordinary was happening. Murphy, the bartender, had stopped all activity behind the bar. His years of experience had taught him to recognize moments of significance, and he stood motionless, a glass and towel in his hands, his attention completely focused on the Admiral's words. The jukebox seemed impossibly loud in the silence, its classic rock suddenly inappropriate for the gravity of the moment. During this review process, Admiral Harrison continued, one officer's record stood out not just for exceptional performance, but for consistent leadership, technical excellence, and the kind of character that exemplifies the very best of naval aviation. Sarah found herself holding her breath, her beer glass suspended between the table and her lips. Around the room, other officers had similar expressions of suspended animation, everyone wondering if they might be the subject of this unusual announcement. The tension was becoming almost unbearable as the Admiral paused, allowing her words to sink in. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, the Admiral said clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the club. The glass in Sarah's hand stopped moving completely. She felt as if time had frozen, the beer partially poured and suspended in space as her name echoed through the room. Her friends turned to look at her with expressions of surprise and curiosity, while conversations at other tables had ceased entirely. Every eye in the club was now focused on her, creating a spotlight effect that made her feel simultaneously visible and vulnerable. Please stand, Lieutenant, Admiral Harrison requested, her tone formal but not unkind. Sarah carefully set her glass down, beer still visible inside it from her interrupted pour, and rose from her chair. Her legs felt unsteady, not from alcohol. She had barely touched her drink, but from the sudden surge of adrenaline and uncertainty about what was happening. The room seemed to spin slightly as she came to attention, every military protocol she had ever learned suddenly feeling crucial to get exactly right. The Admiral smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her stern features and provided the first hint that this might be positive news rather than disciplinary action. Lieutenant Martinez, your squadron commander has recommended you for immediate advancement and assignment to a special operations unit. Your technical skills, leadership abilities, and performance under pressure have earned you a place in one of our most elite aviation programs. The words hit Sarah like a physical force. Special operations assignments were the pinnacle of naval aviation careers, representing opportunities that most pilots could only dream about. These positions required not just exceptional flying skills, but the kind of complete reliability and sound judgment that could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Furthermore, Admiral Harrison continued, effective immediately, you will be receiving a new call sign to reflect your new status and responsibilities. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Call signs in the military were sacred things, identities that followed pilots throughout their careers and often beyond into retirement. Her current call sign, Duchess, had taken months to earn and represented her hard-won acceptance and respect within the squadron. The idea of losing that identity was both thrilling and terrifying. The Admiral paused, allowing the significance of the moment to build. Around the room, officers leaned forward slightly, understanding that they were witnessing something rare and important. Call sign changes were uncommon events, typically reserved for major career transitions or significant achievements that warranted recognition at the highest levels. Your new call sign, Admiral Harrison announced, her voice carrying clearly through the absolute silence. "Will be Phoenix." The reaction was immediate and electric. The room didn't just go quiet. It went rigid, as if everyone present had suddenly been turned to stone. Sarah heard someone nearby draw in a sharp breath, followed by the sound of a chair creaking as someone shifted weight without otherwise moving. The significance of the call sign was immediately clear to everyone present. Phoenix was a legendary call sign in naval aviation, one that had not been used in over 15 years. The last pilot to carry that designation had been Captain Michael Torres, a naval aviator whose heroic actions during a classified mission had saved dozens of lives but cost him his own. The call sign had been retired out of respect, considered too significant and too sacred to ever be used again. Sarah felt her knees threaten to buckle as the full weight of what was happening hit her. This was not just a promotion or a new assignment. This was recognition at a level that few pilots ever achieved. The Admiral was essentially declaring that Sarah's abilities and potential justified reviving one of the most honored call signs in naval aviation history. "The selection committee and I believe," Admiral Harrison continued, "that Lieutenant Martinez embodies the same qualities of resilience, courage, and exceptional skill that made the original Phoenix legendary. Her ability to rise from challenging situations stronger than before, and her consistent performance under the most demanding circumstances make her worthy of this honor." Jake's beer glass had stopped moving entirely, suspended in midair as he processed what he was witnessing. Around the table, Sarah's other friends sat frozen in similar positions of suspended animation, their faces showing mixtures of pride, amazement, and something approaching awe. This was the kind of career moment that happened maybe once in a generation, and they were witnessing it firsthand. The weight of expectation that came with the Phoenix call sign was enormous. Sarah understood that she was not just receiving a new identity, but accepting responsibility for living up to a legacy of excellence that had been established by a genuine hero. The pressure was almost overwhelming, but alongside the fear was a surge of determination and pride that threatened to overwhelm her completely. Admiral Harrison stepped closer, her expression serious but warm. "Lieutenant Martinez, do you accept this assignment and the responsibilities that come with it?" Sarah's voice felt thick as she responded, every word carefully considered and weighted with significance. "Yes, ma'am. I accept the honor and the responsibility." The Admiral nodded once, a sharp movement that indicated satisfaction with Sarah's response. "Very good. Your orders will be delivered Monday morning and you'll report to your new unit within the week. Congratulations, Phoenix." The use of her new call sign sent another wave of shock through the room. Several officers actually shifted in their seats as if they had been physically pushed, the reality of what they had just witnessed beginning to sink in fully. Sarah felt tears threatening at the corners of her eyes, but maintained her composure through years of military discipline. Around the room, expressions ranged from genuine happiness for Sarah's achievement to something approaching reverence for the historical significance of what had just occurred. This was the kind of moment that would be talked about for years, the evening when Phoenix returned to active duty after more than a decade of retirement. The beer in Sarah's abandoned glass seemed to mock the ordinary nature of what had started as a typical Friday evening. Nothing about this night was typical anymore, and nothing about her career would ever be the same again. The silence in the officers' club stretched for what felt like an eternity before slowly beginning to break. Admiral Harrison remained standing near Sarah for a moment longer, her presence lending gravity to the announcement before she offered a crisp nod and moved toward the exit. As she passed each table, officers stood in respect, the casual Friday evening atmosphere completely transformed into something approaching a formal ceremony. Sarah remained at attention until the Admiral left the building, her mind racing to process everything that had just happened. The weight of her new identity felt both exhilarating and terrifying. When she finally sat back down, her friends immediately surrounded her with a mixture of congratulations and barely contained amazement. "Phoenix," Jake whispered, shaking his head in disbelief. "I can't believe they brought Phoenix back." The other pilots at their table looked at Sarah with new eyes, as if seeing her for the first time. The casual friendship dynamics had been forever altered by what they had witnessed. She was no longer just Duchess, their squadron mate and drinking buddy. She was now Phoenix, carrier of a legacy that commanded respect throughout the entire naval aviation community. Murphy approached their table with a bottle of champagne that seemed to have materialized from nowhere. His weathered face showed the kind of understanding that came from decades of military service. "This one's on the house," he said simply, popping the cork with practiced efficiency. "Not every day we witness history being made." As word of what had happened spread through the club, other officers began approaching their table. Senior pilots who had served during the original Phoenix's era came to pay their respects, sharing stories about Captain Torres and the legendary status his call sign had achieved. For many of them, seeing Phoenix return to active duty was an emotional moment that connected them to their own military heritage. Commander Lisa Park, the squadron's executive officer, appeared at Sarah's elbow with tears in her eyes. "Your father would be so proud," she said quietly, referring to Sarah's own military family background. "This is the kind of recognition that validates everything you've worked for." Sarah felt overwhelmed by the outpouring of support and recognition, but also increasingly aware of the enormous expectations now placed on her shoulders. The original Phoenix had earned his reputation through actions that literally saved lives at the cost of his own. She would now be measured against that standard for the rest of her career. Over the following weeks, Sarah's life changed dramatically. Her transition to the Special Operations Unit was swift and comprehensive, involving advanced training programs, security clearances, and briefings on missions that few pilots ever learned about. The work was more demanding than anything she had experienced, but also more meaningful and impactful. Her new squadron mates treated her with a mixture of respect and curiosity. The Phoenix call sign opened doors and commanded attention, but it also created pressure to perform at an exceptional level consistently. Every flight, every decision, and every interaction was viewed through the lens of whether she was worthy of the legendary designation she now carried. The first major test came during a complex rescue operation in hostile territory. A Navy SEAL team had been pinned down during a reconnaissance mission, and standard extraction protocols were insufficient due to enemy fire and difficult terrain. Sarah found herself piloting the lead helicopter in a dangerous nighttime operation that required precision flying under extreme conditions. As she navigated through hostile airspace, threading between mountain peaks while avoiding surface-to-air missiles, Sarah felt the weight of her new identity driving her to exceed her own limits. The original Phoenix had earned his reputation by refusing to abandon personnel in danger, and she was determined to honor that legacy through her actions rather than just her call sign. The mission was successful, with all team members extracted safely despite significant enemy resistance. As they flew back to base, Sarah realized that she had crossed a threshold in her own development. She was no longer trying to live up to the Phoenix name. She was becoming Phoenix through her own actions and decisions. Her squadron commander, Colonel James Wright, debriefed the mission with characteristic brevity. "Outstanding performance, Phoenix. Captain Torres would be proud." The simple statement carried more weight than elaborate praise, acknowledging that she had proven herself worthy of the call sign through her actions under pressure. Months passed, and Sarah's reputation grew alongside her skills. The Special Operations Unit undertook missions that pushed the boundaries of what was possible with rotary-wing aircraft, from humanitarian relief in disaster zones to combat operations in contested airspace. Each successful mission added to her personal legend, while honoring the memory of the original Phoenix. The transformation was not just professional but personal. Sarah found herself becoming a mentor to younger pilots, sharing the lessons she had learned about leadership, decision-making, and maintaining composure under pressure. The responsibility that came with her call sign extended beyond her own performance to helping develop the next generation of naval aviators. During a particularly challenging deployment, Sarah's aircraft suffered mechanical failure during a mission over enemy territory. As warning lights illuminated her cockpit and systems began failing one by one, she faced a decision that would define her career. She could attempt an emergency landing in friendly territory, ensuring her own safety but abandoning the mission, or push forward to complete the objective despite the increasing risks. The choice came naturally. Phoenix meant resilience, the ability to rise from ashes stronger than before. Sarah continued the mission, using her skills and experience to compensate for failing systems while maintaining communication with her crew and ensuring their safety throughout the emergency. The successful completion of the mission under such circumstances became the stuff of squadron legend. When they finally landed at base, Sarah's crew chief examined the aircraft with amazement. "Ma'am, I don't know how you kept this bird in the air. We should have been walking home 20 minutes ago." The mechanical failure had been far more serious than she had realized during the flight, making her performance even more remarkable in retrospect. Admiral Harrison visited the unit several weeks later for a routine inspection, but made a point of speaking privately with Sarah about her performance and development. "When we revived the Phoenix call sign," the Admiral said, "we knew we were taking a significant risk. Call signs carry weight in this community, and bringing back one with such historical significance could have backfired if the wrong person had been selected." Sarah listened carefully, understanding that this conversation was both recognition of her success and guidance for her continued development. Admiral Harrison had taken personal responsibility for the decision to bring back Phoenix, and Sarah's performance reflected directly on that judgment. "Your performance over the past year has validated our decision completely," the Admiral continued. "You haven't just lived up to the Phoenix name, you've added to its legacy through your own actions." That's exactly what we hoped would happen. The conversation marked another milestone in Sarah's development, confirming that she had successfully navigated the transition from promising pilot to legendary aviator. The Phoenix call sign was no longer something she carried as an honor. It had become an integral part of her identity and professional reputation. Years later, when Sarah had advanced to command positions and was training the next generation of special operations pilots, she often reflected on that evening in the officers' club when her life had changed forever. The moment when Admiral Harrison announced her new call sign while she was mid-pour had become a defining experience that shaped everything that followed. The beer glass from that evening, still partially filled when the announcement was made, had been preserved by Murphy the bartender as a piece of club history. It sat in a place of honor behind the bar, labeled simply, "Phoenix Returns, 2024. For new officers visiting the club, the story of that evening became part of their introduction to naval aviation culture and the importance of living up to the traditions they inherited. Sarah's career continued to flourish, but she never forgot the weight of expectation that came with carrying a legendary call sign. Every mission, every decision, and every interaction with younger pilots was influenced by her understanding that she represented something larger than herself. Phoenix was not just her call sign. It was a responsibility to honor the memory of those who had come before while inspiring those who would follow. The Officers' Club still buzzed with activity on Friday evenings, pilots gathering to decompress and build the relationships that made dangerous work possible. But everyone who had been present that night when Phoenix returned carried the memory of witnessing something truly special. A moment when tradition and excellence intersected to create a new chapter in naval aviation history. Sarah Martinez had entered the club that evening as Lieutenant Duchess Martinez, a competent pilot with a promising career ahead of her. She left as Phoenix, inheritor of a legendary call sign and all the responsibility that came with it. The transformation had been instant, but proving worthy of it would take a lifetime of exceptional service and unwavering dedication to the highest standards of naval aviation.